Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of Birds 365, an NFL trade deadline edition, and an election day edition here on Birds 365. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Tuesday morning, brother?
Doing well. Yeah, more important than the election. It's NFL trade deadline, Jay.
Yeah, I saw your hyperbolic tweet about the deadline, and I was cracking up.
It's always there are a few, not many, but there are a few who took it seriously. But there's always a few.
I found it very funny, Johnny Mac, no doubt about it. Make sure you guys give John a follow on his X account at JF McMullen. My co-host, the number one Eagles beat reporter in town, is Johnny Mac. Apparently, he made some waves in the facility on Sunday night from his debate with Cilio. Everybody's hearing John and looking over. What the heck's John doing over there? Making some waves. I love it. And give me a follow at Real Zander.
I'm making waves in the facility? Huh?
Well, no, I meant, didn't Jeff Kerr say yesterday he was listening to you and
oh, yeah. Yeah.
Not meaningful
Not
waves,
important.
but just people listening to you on the show. And
yeah. Yeah, we probably went too far, but whatever.
No, I re-listened to it last night. I thought it was great. Good stuff. Give me a follow, everybody, at Real Zander. That's my new Twitter. A lot of people keep mentioning my old Twitter, which is fine. But use that new Twitter at Real Zander for my sports account. Drop me a follow over there. I always follow back all of JAKIB Nation. So thanks, everybody, for being here. We got a great show planned today. We're going to talk about Nick Sirianni. I know people may or may not like that, but we got to talk about it. We will talk about that. We'll talk about Jalen Hurts, the progression that he's had in the last 4 games. Jimmy Kempski over at Philly Voice put out some great stats, so we will get to them, and we will run through all of that. And we'll do it all here on Birds 365 on a Tuesday morning. I want to welcome and thank everybody for being here this morning. Joe Whipp, good to see you. Zoe, good to see you, Zoe. Mike Fitter, Jimmy Wen, Devontae, Andrew Hernandez. And Andrew reminds me, yes, we will be giving away the Saquon Barkley jersey today. So let me drop the link to join in the chat for those who are not already a member. I will put the link in there, and you guys can join to become a member today, and I will add you into the Saquon Barkley jersey giveaway. John, I'm going to start with the Nick Sirianni exercise. I know you're not going to like it, and I think it's worth talking about because I want to take the results out of the equation of this conversation. I want to look strictly at the decisions.
I wish we could take Nick out of it as well.
Okay, well, that's fine. We can take Nick out of it. That works for the exercise. Yeah. We don't need to talk about Nick at all. We can strictly talk about the decision making in the moment because some of these, John, I just can't agree with them. So we'll run down them. Let's go through each one here. Nick Sirianni had, I think, 4 or 5 big crucial decisions in this game, the ones that are being criticized. Second quarter is the first one. The Eagles are up 10-0 at this time. The ball, it's 4th and 3 at the Jacksonville 22, and it resulted in a turnover on downs. I'll remind everybody, this was the pass to A.J. Brown that was broken up by Darnell Savage. Hurts was a little late on the throw. John, your thoughts on the decision-making there?
Solid decision. I would argue a little late, very late on the throw. Play was there. Player didn't execute.
I would agree.
Solid decision.
I have no issue with that decision early in the game. It's 10-0. That's Eagles football. That's what they've done, and they wanted to push the needle there and kind of put them on their heels. And I have no issue with that decision there. The next one is where I start to get shaky. Second quarter, you're up 16-0. A penalty gives us a 2-point try from the 1. So this was toward the end of the half there when the Eagles got in, and they went for 2 from the 1. John, your thoughts on the decision there to go up 18-0 instead of 17-0?
Anytime they get a free yard, they're taking it. Organizational decision. That's what they believe in.
So that's organizational.
organizational decision. They're going to do it every single time. If you give them a free yard, and by the way, most of the NFL does that. Most of the NFL is caught up to the Eagles in that
Okay, are you telling me
particular
though
aspect.
what you think the Eagles are going to do always in that moment, or are you telling me that what your opinion on that decision-making process is? Because I view you as
No,
a
I don't have a problem with the decision making. That's one of my frustrations with this whole thing is, um, you know, again, it dates back to a certain coach we're not bringing into it. It dates back to the Doug Peterson era. And it is organizational. And it is one of the reasons they have their own their only Super Bowl championship, and everybody seems to ignore it. And the frustrating part for me is, I always joke as an older guy, the only ism allowed in America today is ageism. I shouldn't be the open-minded one, supposedly. But I mean, this has worked for the Philadelphia Eagles. And anybody who doesn't see it isn't paying attention.
yeah, but what does that have to
So
do with the decision on
organizational,
Sunday?
what do you mean? It's an overriding philosophy. It's an organizational decision. Anytime that they are lining up for an extra point and the opposing team gives them a free yard, they are going to go for two.
Okay, so your belief is that they should not factor in
Nope.
any of this of the
Certainly
circum.
not against
Okay, let me
certain.
finish, John. Let me finish.
Well, no, you're saying should they factor in this situation? No.
So you're
No.
telling me you can make it a 3-score game with a point after and add another possession
In the
that the
second
Jet.
quarter, no. Maybe in the fourth quarter.
What do you mean maybe in the fourth quarter? It came back to bite them in the fourth quarter because they had to do it again in the fourth quarter and failed again.
I'm saying maybe in the fourth quarter you can even broach it, but in the second quarter against that opponent, and by the way, even though it's a poor opponent, it would be even worse against a Detroit to not do it because you need more points against Detroit. You probably don't even need the points against Jacksonville. Although,
Which again should go into the decision making.
It is a common decision, and this one's a common decision around the NFL, not even the Eagles. If
Yeah,
you
it makes
give up the
sense to
free
me if
yard,
you're not trying to push it to a 3-score game.
why are you worried about a 3-score game in the second quarter
Because
against the
what does
Jacksonville
18
Jaguars?
get you versus 17? It's the same thing.
It's the same thing why you trust a player in a certain situation. There's unintended consequences to anything. They talk about all week. I've said this so many times. I feel it goes in one ear, out the other.
Well, no, I'm
They're
listening. I
trying to
just don't get how you
impose
can
their
look
will.
past why that
They're
would be
trying to
important.
impose their will. Everybody's on board. Yeah, they want to be bullies. They want to do this. They want to do that. And then when it doesn't work out to the satisfaction, then you're like, oh, they should put the brake. They shouldn't be bullies there. They should play safe, and they should do this and
I
they
don't think
should
it's
do
playing
that.
safe. Make it a 3-score game. And why are you telling me that possessions don't matter? Of course they matter.
Against
But John, it came back later in the game, and that's why these decisions matter, even if it's the second quarter of the game. Because you can't expect everything to go right in a football game. That's football.
Evidently you can, because
Well,
that's all everybody's arguing. You're saying take the results out of it. This is the point why I don't want to do this exercise. You're not taking the results out of it.
I certainly am.
After a successful conversion, I say this to everybody. And if you come back to me and say that's a dumb decision, I'll listen to you.
I would say, I would 100% say that.
I never, ever, ever hear that. I never hear that.
Well, I'll tell you that right
people
now.
say they're taking it out, but they're not taking it out because you wouldn't give Zander, you wouldn't give a flying buck if they converted that. You would have yawned and said, oh, they got a tush push. You would have yawned and moved on. Yeah, if you're being honest with yourself.
I would have moved on because it wouldn't have been consequential to the game. But I'm talking about the decision-making process. Why go for 2 there when it's a lesser percentage play when the 1
Well,
gets you
all
the
right,
3
I'll say
lead?
this: if you believe that, if you want to die on that hill, and you're telling the truth, and you really believe that, then go blame Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie. Go blame them, because that's their belief, and they're not hiring a head coach who begs up in that situation, because they don't want to do that. They constantly talk about winning outside the margins. They constantly talk about it. They believe in it. It has worked for them. You have to give them credit for that. You have to give them credit for being ahead of the curve. And then people want to nitpick when it doesn't work out in a micro sense. And they don't want to look at the macro of the whole entirety of how successful this philosophy has been for this organization.
Yeah, but past success, John, does not guarantee future results.
It doesn't. It doesn't. So, one of the things I should have brought up is the failures of the last 3 teams the Eagles have played because they played ultra conservatively. Now, it didn't matter with the New York Giants because they're so bad, but Brian Daboll lays up. It mattered a lot for Zach Taylor. It could have been up 14-0, and that could have changed the entire complexity of that game if he had the balls to go for it on 4th and 1. 4th and 1, and he didn't, and he laid up. And again, with Doug Peterson,
I told you I had no issue with the 4th down decision.
and with Doug Peterson, 4th and 3 at the plus 49. Now he's out of the leash of the Philadelphia Eagles, and everybody says, the organization and they do so many things, and they put, well, he should have been under the auspices of the Eagles organization, because that was an obvious go for it situation with Jacksonville, have a chance to steal the game and have this miraculous upset. And he begged off, and it cost him. Every single team over this winning streak made the mistake. I didn't go back to Cleveland. I don't know if they made the mistake, but there were 3 different teams who made the mistake. And we're sitting here talking, nitpicking about unsuccessful plays, saying we're taking the result out. We wouldn't be nitpicking successful plays.
John, if I'm the coach, whether it's successful or not, I live and die with the result. I would have taken the 1 for one reason. The 1 makes it a 3-possession game. That's it. That's the only thing I'm arguing. I'm not arguing the result. You're putting words in my mouth.
I'm not putting words in your mouth. You just admitted we wouldn't even have this conversation with you can't do it. You think you're doing it, but you can't do it. You wouldn't even be having this conversation. But to get to your point, if you truly believe that over the long haul, yeah, you're going to be less successful than the Eagles.
But I'm not arguing
in that moment, you're going to be more successful.
I'm not arguing the philosophy. I'm arguing in that specific
That's
instance.
why they do it, the philosophy.
Okay,
that's
but
why
so
they
just take the philosophy and apply blanket over every single game and every single decision? You think that's
again, in the fourth
you're a smart enough guy to know that different things factor into every single decision.
Don't bring up the smart. Don't go down the sillier route. Don't go down the sillier route.
I'm not going down any route.
I'm not pretending. I'm telling you what the organizational belief is. So the philosophy runs the situation. Now in the 4th quarter, and by the way, and the coach that everybody, it wants to blame, it's his job. It's a lightning rod. So from their situation, they think he's doing a good job with that part because they take the heat. He takes the heat off everything else, which I've explained. He's more of a firewall because I do believe in the 4th quarter, he might make a different decision. Not positive, but I think he might. Now, the organization, no, they wouldn't. He's more of a firewall from going further down the route that people don't think they don't want him to go, but have loved it overall. They just don't realize it.
So the score has
So if it's philosophy, and I'm not talking about philosophy, what is the point? That's the foundation of why they do it, because they believe in it. Now, if they were shitty at the tush push, that's the second part of it. Maybe the philosophy changes, but they haven't. They've been ultra successful. So that factors into it as well. But the whole thing correlates back to the philosophy. And by the way, because if they did fail in this particular game, if that does cause second guessing, and if the stuff outside the building seeps inside the building, that's a bad thing for the Philadelphia Eagles long term. Because if they stop having this advantage and they start being like Jacksonville and Cincinnati and the New York Giants, again, in the macro sense, people are not going to be happy with that. Not going to be happy with it at all.
So the score of the game and like the specific circumstance, I'm just trying to be clear. You're telling me it has no implication on the decision there.
On the second, none, zero. In the second quarter, zero. I said in the fourth quarter, perhaps, and I'm not even 100% sure, perhaps because, by the way, because of one certain guy, not because of the organization, because of one certain guy, he might make a different decision. Might. But, he might just listen to what they want done. I don't know. But he might make a different decision.
All right, forget the organization for a second. You don't believe that they should factor in anything that where the game is, the score of the game, the circumstance of the game, none of that? You don't believe that any of that should be factored into the decision?
That's not even remotely what I said.
I'm
talking about this particular situation. Now listen closely. If you give them a free yard on a PAT conversion, remember, in the one failure, Jake Elliott kicked the extra point, and they took the point off the board because they got the free yard. If you give them a free yard in a PAT situation, they are going to go for two. That situation, not every situation, that particular situation. Obviously, situations in games matter dramatically in other fourth down situations. I'm talking about when the opposing team gives you a free yard, they are going to go for it. They are going to, and by the way, that has become a normalized thing around the NFL. That's not just a Philadelphia thing.
Yeah, well, I don't give a shit how normal it is. I'm taking the extra point there to give me a 3-score lead. I digress. Let's move on because we'll get to the next decision here. Third quarter, they're up 22-0. A penalty, same thing. Gives you a 2-point try from the one. Again, they made the same decision to go for two there. I don't know what 24-0 there does for you. That 23-0 doesn't. Either way, it's a 3-score game. I would have taken the high percentage point after.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, concussion protocol. They're going to take it. Okay. They think they're taking advantage of the other team. Typically, you're not factoring in at all about the tush-push success either, which is the reason they are the way they are. And it went off the rails. I mean, it's organizational.
I just don't get how there's
you can fire this coach tomorrow, and they're not bringing in a coach who's going to be conservative.
I'm not asking them to fire the coach. I'm simply analyzing.
I'm saying they're not going. It doesn't matter who it is. They're not hiring a coach who's going to be conservative. They don't believe in it. They don't believe it's an advantage. They believe it's a disadvantage. I think over a very large sample size, they've been proven correct, and they will continue down that road.
Okay, so I was successful in 22. I'm just going to keep doing something and beating my head against the wall. Like I don't see how that's a good way to go about anything. I mean, I'm sorry.
Again, you're looking at one team. You're not looking at the other failures in other cities and how they play, because the vast majority of teams are less aggressive than the Eagles, and it doesn't serve them well. And the one team that's more aggressive, it serves them very well. There's a few, but and by the way, the Eagles have set the sort of foundation for the rest of the league, unfortunately, from their perspective, because people are starting to catch up. But yeah, I mean, they're not. It doesn't matter who it is. That's my point. It doesn't matter who it is. This team's going to be aggressive by nature. Now, if it's, if Jalen Hurts isn't here, if you have a quarterback that is not mobile or a quarterback that is injury prone or a quarterback who can't do it, then you got to shift. You got to shift. If there's personnel changes, you got to shift. Now, they're still going to try to be aggressive in different ways, but you have to do it differently. In the case of the tush push, it literally it's astonishing to me that people that follow this team and they do. That's the ironic part. Again, when it's all peaches and cream, bully him, be physical, greatest play ever. Oh, the league's trying to ban the tush push, which was never even true. How can they do that? How can they? They're always against the Eagles. Oh, but don't do the tush push when it doesn't work.
That's
I
not
mean,
even what I'm arguing, John.
how
If I'm the coach, and I'm not saying I'd be a good head coach, I'm looking at the decision. If the one gives me the 3-score game, I see no advantage of taking the risk and going for the 2. I would just settle with my Pro Bowl kicker and take the 1 there. Now, if it's a different game, if I'm trying to get back in a game, you're right. If I'm playing Detroit Lions, it's a different approach. That's a different circumstance with a different set of parameters to make my decision.
What do I always tell you, Xander? If your GPS is programmed somewhere, you're getting there. Like coaching, for instance, there's a lot of intangibles to coaching. One is trusting your players. One is getting your players to play for you. I'm not even getting it because that's way too out of left field, and people aren't going to get that. Trusting your players and not trusting your players and what that puts into the back of their heads. After all their success and saying, you know what, we're gonna beg off here. I mean, because that's such a esoteric thing. I mean, I try not to even go down that route, but that plays into it as well, trusting your players. Now, the same thing you just said, Pro Bowl kicker, we're eventually going to get to. I'm guessing you're not going to say Pro Bowl kicker with 57-yard field goal. Trusting your player in that particular situation. And that's one where I admit I would have had some, but I'm not the head coach of the team. I would have punted the football. But I do recognize that would put doubt in the mind of like, what the fuck? I'm a Pro Bowl kicker.
Right.
I've made these big kicks all the time. So I can say it. If Nick Sirianni does it, and I shouldn't have brought up his name, that's my fault. If he does it, it has wide-ranging repercussions that people don't even think about. Like I can say it, I don't have to deal with him.
No,
I don't have to
I
deal
can
with
understand
the player.
that line of thinking completely.
I don't have to deal with the player. To say you're not going to trust that offensive line and that quarterback to get a tush push in, boy, man.
But is there not like a level of common sense there where the players would even be like, "Oh yeah, duh, let's get up 3 scores," right?
Nah, I don't. They don't think that way. Football players are about imposing their will, and especially ones who are bullies and impose their will typically. And they want coaches that have confidence in them. And by the way, they've earned that confidence for the most part. And if that wavers, that's not a good thing. But again, that's too esoteric. I don't even want to go down that route. But
I actually understand that point, though. I get what you're saying completely.
But to not trust these players in that situation, That's unfathomable to me.
All right, there's
With
one more decision I
with
want to
their
talk about.
demonstrated previous success.
There's one more decision I want to talk about, and I'm not going to go to the fourth quarter one, which when they're up 28-16, they went for 2. Whatever. Third down or third quarter. This is after the Jags got back in the game. It's now 22-16. Nick goes for 4th and 1 at the Jacksonville 25, resulting in a turnover on downs. Now, I get it based on
Oh,
what you
by the
just
way,
said.
real quick, the Lions have traded for Zadarius Smith, so
Yeah, and I think
um,
they sent a 6th rounder for him.
that's not good news for the Eagles. But I digress. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're about to have when we get to our first break, we're going deep in the trade deadline. We'll talk about trade deadlines, candidates, the Bryce Huff commentary from Tom Pelissero yesterday. We'll get into all that in just a second. That one, John. You have the same thinking there to go for it on 4th down instead
I
of
have no
going up
problem
9?
going for it. I don't like what they did. I thought that showed what I was talking about. That showed lack of confidence in what has worked because you had a little bit of adversity. Now, a lot of people have pointed out EJ Jenkins was open. Um, I have a difficult time with that because I can't imagine EJ Jenkins is in the
Yeah, me too. I'm not going to kill him for EJ Jenkins.
well, that's well, I can't imagine that he's in the progression. Like I was watching the Sunday night game because Joe Flacco was playing. I like Joe from when he was here, and you know, kind of rooting for him. Good dude, 40 years old, has seen it all. Um, and Collinsworth a couple times is like killing him on 3rd and short, 4th and short because there's a wide one of them was Trey Sermon is wide open in the flat. And I'm like, come on, Chris, Trey Sermon isn't in the damn progression. I mean, he's not even looking at
Yeah,
Trey Sermon.
you would think he would know that too.
Well, he does know it, but you know, TV's a little bit different, obviously. But that's what I'm saying. So I can't kill him. You know, a lot of people have pointed out EJ was wide open, and again, if he immediately threw the football, he would have been wide open. But you know, it wouldn't have been. And again, he wasn't in the progression, so I can't kill Jalen for that. Um, Even though on film it looks like it would have been an easy conversion. So I'm not even going down player execution because I don't know what the progression was, but
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to do this one without factoring in the result because if you're going to go for it, I would say go for the tush push again, but they
yeah,
didn't.
that's the problem I have with that.
But you don't have an
Getting
issue with like people who say take the field goal there to go up 2 possessions and make it a more
no,
enticing.
that was 4th and inches. I mean, that's part of this. So my criticism there is, come on, stop it. They did waver because of a little bit of adversity. And by the way, they might have gotten the one, and it might have been a bad call. It might not have been a bad call. Like some people think it was a bad call. Some people said it wasn't a bad call. I don't know. It was very close. I believe it was called uh, 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 not touchdown, but extra point conversion on the field. They would have stuck with it as opposed, but they called he didn't get in, so they stuck with that. I think it was one of those. So I think people don't even factor that in. I think the Eagles didn't factor that in, and that was inches. And they would, yeah, I would have stuck with the tush push, but for the 4th and 1, no. I mean,
So and then I'm genuinely asking me, am I personally putting far too much stock in making it another possession game? Like the only times I've looked at the decision and said, "Oh, I wouldn't have done that," is not criticizing their aggressive philosophy. I'm not asking for a conservative coach, but when I look and I'm like, okay, if the simple play extends it and makes it where either in this case it would have made it a 2 possession game, and the case earlier would have made it a 3 possession game. Me personally, that's where I'm like, oh, I would have just taken the highest percentage play
well, I
possible
think
there, whatever it
I
was.
think in the second quarter, yes, I think it's you don't even think about shit like that in the second quarter.
That was in the
Um,
3rd quarter, that one there.
no, I'm saying as it gets
22-16.
later in the game, yeah, I think it factors in more. Certainly in the
Okay.
4th quarter, it would factor in. In the second quarter, nah. I mean,
Yeah, that one was third quarter, the 22-16, but I get what you're saying. It's a scale of how
yeah,
important it gets. Yeah.
and certainly in the fourth quarter, yeah, it's important. But yeah, I would say second quarter, no, I'm not even thinking about it. And I know people say it was chasing points. I don't, it's to me, it's, and I know it's an organizational philosophy. Um, Now, I and the ironic part, as I said, he's more of a firewall than anything, because sometimes he will do what he wants to do, sort of like Vic, which we'll talk about with Bryce up. Sometimes he does do what he wants to do, and it probably doesn't go over that well. And I think it's more of a firewall. So you point out, is it always, 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 always? I would say it's always, 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 always with the organization. I would say he would beg off a little bit in certain situations.
Do you think the organizational philosophy should change off that, or are you
No,
confident saying that that's good?
it is good. Long
Yeah.
term, it's good.
I have no issue with the philosophy. The only thing I would do is I would try and add some malleability
Well,
to
it's
the
very first of all, it's very rare. There's plenty of malleability in other situations. I'm talking specifically when you're lining up for an extra point, somebody jumps offside and they give you
yeah.
a free yard. That is always they are always going to go
I
for
get
that.
what yeah, I get where you're going with it. I would just say, I mean, that's what I'm asking for, more malleability. And like if it's going to make it a 2-score game, just take the extra point. But I get it. I'm not going to beat the horse into the
Now,
wall. I
the
mean,
more times you have failure, as you saw it
right.
in one game.
It lowers the percentages and you start to look at it differently potentially.
Yes, and they already wavered off it on the last one by going away from it, and they probably shouldn't have. So it's not a good thing when you fail because it does raise doubt, um, and it is hard to be disciplined. I mean, look at it. Look at how much we're talking about. Not just us, everybody. Look at how much it's getting talked about, and they hear it. They hear all of it. So anything that creates doubt is not obviously a good thing. So you do want success. I'm not trying to downplay the lack of success because ultimately that's very important. Um, but overall, it's proven to be the way to go. And it's very difficult to be disciplined though, because and I go to Detroit because I talk about Detroit so much in this type of circumstance because people don't have any skin in the game with the Lions. There's no Lions fans around here, or very few. Um, and they got killed in the NFC Championship game. And if they would have played conservatively, they would have been in the Super Bowl. They would have been in the Super Bowl if they played conservatively. And it's really hard to explain to people, yeah, but we're not even in that game to get to the
Right.
Super Bowl if we don't play the way we play. And you don't just get to that position and do the exact opposite of what you did,
I
even though
understand
it
that.
didn't work
I
out.
understand why that would be a hard sell too to people in the
Very
moment who
hard
are upset
sell.
about. Yeah.
Very hard sell. Um, And Detroit, it looks like they've overcome it. Obviously, they look like the best team in the NFL. We'll see how the rest of the season goes, but they are sticking to their guns. Um, the Eagles have pretty much stuck to their guns. I think they will continue. Even if Nick gets fired, I think they will continue um, down this path. So, for those hoping
Well,
for,
definitely, right? I mean, if it's organizational, it's higher
yeah,
than Nick. Yeah.
so they're not hiring Mike Vrabel. Yeah, they're not hiring. And I don't know. I don't want to pick on Mike, but I know a lot of people because they think he's old school defense, blah, blah, blah. If you don't go along with what they want from an aggression standpoint, they're not going to hire you. They're not going to hire you.
That can be, there's some negatives I think that can be perceived to that. Like, Andy's not going for it every single time. I mean, I think he's an aggressive coach,
They
but I
don't
don't think
go
he
for it every single time. Again, I you're taking one situation, which is rare, a team giving you a free yard on a point after and expanding it. There's oftentimes that people have talked about why Nick did you go on 4th and 3 and you didn't go on 4th? He'll do in the same game. He'll go on 4th and 3 and then he won't go on 4th and 3. And people ask him, well, why? And he'll explain different situation. Didn't feel it was the right thing to do here. Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not just one game. There's a long history of this. And I would say he's a bit of a firewall to where they want to be, which is more at the Detroit extreme end.
Interesting. Well, all right, let's move on because I want to get into the trade deadline. But I will bring up one decision that does not have any Eagle implications that we should be able to all agree on. In last night's Monday Night Football game, Tampa Bay decides to, not go for 2 and send it to overtime and give it to Patrick Mahomes.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to bring that up. And yeah, you should go for the win there.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
And, it's amazing to me. No offense to you, Zander, but people want aggression when they want to, and then they want to be the most conservative guy in the world in another sense. I mean, on the road, and it doesn't surprise me all because Todd Bowles is, the type of coach the Eagles wouldn't want. And he did what he did. He didn't win the coin toss. And yeah, I mean, you're basically now, obviously you can go out there and stop Patrick Mahomes and he got banged up. It looked pretty serious right away. It's like Gumby, man. You think he's going to be out for weeks. And
yeah, he's pretty incredible, man.
But yeah, I don't want to give the ball to Patrick Mahomes in that situation.
Me neither.
I would have went for the win.
I would have.
They're reeling. You just scored. Now, if you bail, that coach is going to get eviscerated. So this all plays into it. Most guys don't want to take that heat. They can explain, oh, we lost the coin toss. We didn't play well on defense. That it's never good when you lose, but it's much more explainable than if you go, all right, one play, we're gonna try to win this football game on the road against the Super Bowl champions who are undefeated. Yeah, you gotta try to win that game.
Yeah,
right there.
I'm not putting the ball back in Patrick Mahomes' hands, no doubt. Let me do a quick live read for BetUS, and then we will talk trade deadline and Bryce Huff. John, I couldn't believe what came out yesterday about Bryce Huff. Now, I don't know how much merits to it. I don't know how real it is. We'll talk to you about that in just a second. Before I do that, I'm going to tell you guys about the great people at BetUS. Check them out, everybody. I just put the promo code on the screen. It's promo code YouTube150, and it gives you 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit, and you get 125% on your second and third deposit. So go check out BetUS today. That's betus.com.pa. It's betus.com.pa. Use that promo code. They have the fastest payouts in the industry, 24/7 customer support, and they'll even give you your own custom account manager. Big thanks to them for sponsoring this 2-hour edition of Birds 365